That's how you like to start the videos.
Mm-hmm.
You ready? Beep boop. Beep boop. Beep boop. Larissa Cole, welcome to Underworld Party, where me and my invisible friends interview future dead people. First question, before we get started. Are you a guest on my podcast or am I a guest on yours?
These are the questions.
Deep, deep, deep questions. Beep, clack, clack. Take 7. Underworld Party, interviewing future dead people. Larissa Cole.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do an interview today. About you, for you, with you.
Aww.
About this video that you have filmed. This 30-minute sort of truth-telling. Well, I mean, how do you even want to explain it? Knowing that we're going to have a link to it, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it was a little bit of like, it was just time to like go through the door. The door being starting to tell this story and sharing what I feel like I'm learning about something super, super important in the world.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm calling, well, the video is called Recovering from Addiction to Victimhood. And that's just like the starting point, I think. Yeah, one of the most uncomfortable and painful experiences and situations that I've had the pleasure of coming across.
So, what was uncomfortable? The content, or filming the content, or the like? What are you talking about?
Not making it, just the experience of like the spell of victimhood and the addiction to victimhood.
The kind of arc that you went through in your life.
Yeah.
And I know people are, obviously watch the video and then watch this interview because it won't make fucking much sense. But I'm just wondering, like, how do you feel now after filming it? If this was like a long time coming, maybe, it seems like you're alluding to it being something that you were kind of stirring and thinking of for a long time, and now it's happened. How are you feeling?
There's definitely a little bit of fear. Just knowing that, like, I didn't know how else to start sharing this information in an effective way other than to just say what I could in these, like, little chunks of time. So, I made a half-hour video that was a start to this conversation and sharing. And afterwards, I felt good, like spirits and ancestors were like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also like, oh wow, there's so much to unpack still, and there's so much to explain, and like illuminate about that process.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's just like the first step into a very large ecosystem of trouble.
Yeah, it's a lot of trouble, and it's definitely been like such a major turnaround or arc in my own life, and the whole thing is just very painful because it's like I just see the ways that people ultimately aren't getting what they need, and that the ecosystem isn't getting what it needs, and it's very sad, and people are hurting each other a lot in the process, I think, and just kind of derailing the momentum of actually like moving towards something transformational.
Well, okay, so here's something that you said that I had a question about, and I think it dovetails in. So you said just now a few things. People aren't getting what they need, the ecosystem isn't getting what they need. And so in the video, you reference sort of like going from a kind of before-after kind of situation. And I'm going to reference that video now. It's like when you were talking about your struggle in this sort of context or worldview that you were kind of stuck in, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you kept saying that you were trying to get something during those times from people that you weren't getting. So I'm interested in unpacking that a little bit. Like, what were you trying to get, and how were you trying to get it?
Yeah, that's the really tricky part, is because like, so I would break it down into a few layers. It's like on the surface, like human level, Larissa, in a argument with someone or in a conflict with someone, I think I'm trying to like explain something, I'm trying to communicate, and I'm trying to be heard, and I think that's the main one. It's like I was trying to be heard, but I was also having a trauma response, so I was trying to be heard in a way that is extremely anxious, in the sense that if I don't get heard, then I won't be okay.
Mm-hmm. And sort of like, how would you know you got heard?
Yeah, I mean, that's happened. It's happened before, where I was having a trauma response, and I was in the swirl of like this kind of possession, and someone even amidst that, like they were still able to just actually hear the deeper call or the deeper longing underneath that, which I think is why, I was breaking it down into layers. It's like I wanted to be heard, but what is that really about? So deeper than that is myself plus many other spirits, and especially like I mean, it's really all kinds, but I think I'm specifically looking at particularly ancestors who we might associate with femme rage or wounded feminine energies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it starts to get more complicated. It's like it's this kind of rabid, like almost murderous, vengeful kind of energy, which of course is just pain and grief, but it's being expressed in this other way.
Sure.
There's a like, well, I'll save that for another time, but
sure.
So occasionally someone has been able to just like, for whatever reason, they just knew that completely not judging me and completely seeing exactly what was being channeled through me. Like, they weren't threatened by it. They weren't knocked off their own center. Yeah. And they could just be like, fuck. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And that would poof something entirely in the system. Like, oh.
Like relief.
Total relief, and like
until the next time.
until the next time.
So the relief is temporary, but it feels really amazing. And it seems like this is like a highly skilled.
It is temporary.
Thing. You don't think it's temporary?
I mean, aspects of it are, but I think it was a truly like some of those moments were actually truly healing, because the exact that kind of non-judgmental attention
right
was right there.
right
Were you gonna say something?
Well, I mean, it just seems like this particular kind of attention is either rare or highly skilled. And so if you're going around trying to get that from just like everyone, you're probably going to be disappointed most of the time.
Oh yeah. Right? It mostly doesn't work.
Yeah, sure.
It mostly doesn't work out at all.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right. But the sort of like the desire is sort of not a problem. I mean, we all have these things that we want, right?
The super, right. You can hear it in people. It's super deep in there. Like they're just like the pain or the longing and the like hollow feeling is super real, and
right.
Right. And that drives you, and it's very, and again, the inability to actually like just accept that that's what's happening also inside, that there is this like hollowness or this like
right
fear or terror,
because maybe you as the person enacting this don't even want to admit that, because then you would like crumble or something, right? So there's like almost a fight response in your need to sort of heal, and that's very hard to deal with on the other side of that, like people who are fighting you but also want something from you, and then you don't want to admit what's really happening, and also they might be like, well, that's really not up to me, like, because there's this deeper thing going on that's really just like hard to fathom for a lot of people, right?
Yes. Yep, exactly.
Right. Well, continuing with this thread, so it was like, what were you trying to get, and how were you trying to get it, and also like, so now what's changed? Like how, like I imagine that you still need that, or you get that some other way. Otherwise, there wouldn't be like a real transformation, right?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely don't claim to be somebody who's like super far along in this process even. I mean, from what I can tell based on just other people around me, it's like I feel like I have enough distance that I can even just share about this, but I don't know. I mean, part of it is that like the need actually completely transforms, and that's why I also call it an addiction, because it's like once this fundamental healing starts to take place, you don't need the same things. You don't feel that same like horrible grasping for certain things, right? Because you've got this core that's just there all the time.
You don't need heroin, you just need to take a walk.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And that just, I mean, in my experience, just from having like, doing like center cultivation and this like secure attachment or primary relationship with spirit and nature, shit just went away. Like stuff just stopped happening the way that it used to.
Do you have clear memories of like tipping points in that process? And maybe you could share some that are not like super intense, like,
Well, I shared one in the video, which was I had a teacher / counselor person who was helping me see it.
Right. But that didn't really allude to the practices that you had to do on your own. That was just somebody catalyzing this kind of like, look deeper, kid, right?
Well, she was, I mean, looking back, she was teaching me something about like, I think she was understanding these practices through Zen Buddhism, but...
Okay, sure. So she had some inherent things she was doing in the background.
Yeah, and she would say things to me like, you need to just enjoy washing the dishes. You need to, basically what we, in the work that we do, we talk about it as like orientation. This very, very simple pleasure practice, through the senses.
Right, and in the body. You're like embodied washing the dishes, so you can feel the water and whatever. Breathe into your toes and genitals when you wash the dishes or whatever, it is. But I'm just wondering, was she explicitly teaching you those, or did you have to go kind of find that on your own?
I would say mostly I had to find it on my own, and yeah, that's a good question. Like the core practices, I think, are just in general, like lower body connection and cultivation, like center practice or hara practice.
Sure.
It's very simple, but it is just that simple. Like as soon as I shifted in my life from spending, so if I'm 50% in my belly and 50% not in my belly, when it went from 60% in my belly to 40% not in my belly, everything changed. Like everything changed. Just that little tip.
So even the needs changed.
The needs changed. The needs went away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
And you know, I'm still living my life, so I don't know. Things will probably come back, but like, but there just was this massive shift, and I do really experience it as like, you know, there were just certain days where I'd been practicing for long enough that all of a sudden it's like an accumulated effect happened. Like one day,
the tipping point.
In an afternoon, like I remember walking home from something I was doing in town and just being like, shit, whoa, like something is gone. And it's like I can see more clearly. There's less fog. And this, like some of that gnawing, a lot of that gnawing, like graspy energy is just not there. And it mostly has stayed that way.
Right.
Which is really interesting.
Well, I think that's kind of like a pattern we see. The more you do it and the more I've seen people do it, at a certain point there is no going back. Because you keep remembering and you're like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to forget what this feels like, you know. So the system kind of holds that.
Yeah, and I would say, so the other thing I was doing while I was in that phase of really like shifting things, was I would do these just kind of little ceremonies or rituals with myself that was a combination of sound, movement, energy work, collaborating with different spirits or people around like this thing.
Sure.
Which was really just me getting slow, like gradually able to be more and more direct with the thing, right? The pain, the trauma that came from my own life, or the trauma that came from my ancestors, or that came from the collective. Like I started to be able to actually turn toward it without flinching so much, without bracing so much, without trying to escape into some kind of story about it.
Right.
And actually
or even try to fix it, right?
Not try to fix it.
Really,
nope.
Yeah.
Just really, really be with it and get to know it. And this is a dicey part, I think, because it starts to feel, so what's true for me is that when I started to do that, I started to recognize an inherent beauty and belonging and just intrinsic, like, interconnection between everything, between all of it. Right? So it's no longer saying, like, this shouldn't, like, I don't want this to be real. I don't want this to have been true. This is not okay. Right? All this, like, cutting off.
Sure, resistance, yeah.
And instead it was like, oh shit, there's actually so much here that I wasn't able to sit with, that you just, and the only way to start understanding that is to do it.
Right. You get real close to the fire and you think you're going to get burned, but you somehow don't.
Somehow don't get burned.
yeah, totally. Yeah, the poison contains the medicine. It's real. No one wants to believe that anyway. So
I know, and I was told, I got like a classic, what I consider to be like a classic kind of spirit work training, and that was the thing that was said over and over and over again. And some part of me could just feel that it was true, but you can't, I can say this on this video, and people are going to be like,
no, of course not.
No. I'm like, there's there's literally no other way other than through some poetry. Some poetry and art can start to convey this, but
Sure.
talking about it is like...
No. It seems nonsense. And that's sort of like maybe some of the final questions I want to talk about is like, so we live in this world. We don't live in a different one. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like there is a reality to being completely honest with all the isms and all the ghosts and all the trouble and all the pain and violence that humans are enacting on each other and the more than human world. And so we live in this world. We don't live in another world. And you've been through this process. So my question to you is like, how has your idea or definition of justice or healing changed because of this? And how do you look at the world currently with all the trouble that we're in from this vantage point compared to the old one?
You know, the first thing that comes up when you ask that is that I think my attitude is much less arrogant than it used to be. That my experience going through this has humbled me and continues to humble me to a degree that I really see I'm really seeing over and over the folly, the like foolishness of humans. And let's be honest, it's like, I think, at least in my circles, it's like a lot of people who are westernized or living in colonized contexts trying to like do this transformative justice thing. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Sure.
And there's still just this really, really human-centered, colonized way of looking at everything, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So one is just, I feel like a humbleness around how complex just the movements of these things are inside of relationships and inside of communities. And I now no longer, like now I'm building certain maps, but they're not linear, they're not predictive. And really the first aspect of this work, I think, given what I feel like I understand now about possession and the way that spirit is playing a role in all this, is that we've got to help people get just to this basic place of like sensing clearly or perceiving a little more clearly, specifically like helping people clear that fog. So really moving away from the mega over reliance on the intellectual like framing of what we think is happening, moving much more from the belly and behaving in a way that is not like you really have to let go of your need to control like how you think this should go or what people should do, and open yourself to the unpredictable emergent process that is how healing actually moves, that is how transformation actually moves. And we're not going to see all the pieces.
Sure. I mean, I'm also hearing a bit of like there's a very stark shift in the sort of narrative and what is important in the narrative, right? Because you're basically telling a narrative now that's different than the narrative you used to have, and everyone's got their own version of this sort of narrative fixation or whatever, but we're talking about a certain way of being with meaning that is primarily mostly about the senses and about like sort of deconstructing or examining your own interpretations of things, and also identity, right? Like a lot of this is like victim, and victim is a sort of like identity marker that is kind of in some way arbitrary, right? It's like everyone can say they're a victim of something, and everyone can say that somebody else is a perpetrator of something, but at a certain point it doesn't really do much because it's not about the thing that's happening, right? Yeah. It's about this interpretation of what people want to believe is happening, and then what we're trying to control other people to do once we are having this narrative battle, right? Yep. Like, I want you to agree to my narrative, and then if you agree to my narrative, I can demand things of you, basically, right?
Well, and also pay attention to like what that's doing too. Usually the reason why people are buckling, like they want to buckle down on like, I took this social justice class from this person, and this is how it is now, and I have the answers, right? That's complete anxiety. That's complete anxiety about the fact that like all language, all thoughts are approximations of reality.
Right.
They're important and they're useful, but ultimately, like, you're not safe from the complete unpredictability and mystery of life and how this works,
Right.
by buckling into this one, this one narrative or this one frame.
Well, trying to find stability in a narrative is always a bit tricky because narratives are really they're not like permanent.
Can't hold on to it forever. Like, let it help you. Like, if it does help you,
sure.
let it help you, and then be ready to also let it go when it's time to let it go.
Right.
And that's the thing that westernized, colonized people like really struggle with.
Right. This kind of paradoxical non-duality.
Oh yeah, right. This yes.
Yeah. Right, because it's like, well, not because and to just, what do you think about bypassing now? Because like if let's say you're in this paradoxical non-duality thing where things are contextual and nuanced and emergent, and you have to sense, and they're all contextual. It's like all relative.
Yeah.
I could definitely hear a bunch of people going, "You're just bypassing with this. You're just trying to not be accountable, or you're just trying to bypass." And it's like, I can hear the tiny bit of like fear truth in that.
Mm-hmm.
But what would you say to those kinds of people?
Yeah, well, a couple things. Just on a practical note, I think it's really useful to be able to operate on many different levels. So on a human to human level, basic things like saying I'm sorry if you stepped on somebody's toes, or like you're like, I hear you say that, and these really just basic kind of ways of communicating on a human to human level are important, right? And not not spinning your own way of like not being with what's really there, right? By being like, well, it's just the spirits, it's just this, right? But that's not what we're talking about.
Right.
So I'm saying you need to engage all levels. So that human to human level, just kind of the thing I think we're used to, and then these deeper levels where we're actually listening to the ancestors, or we're listening to the land, or we're listening to these other spirits, and we're like, yes, I hear that, and also here's what I'm seeing and tracking. What are you seeing and tracking from the belly, from this place of clearer sensing that's not doesn't have an agenda about controlling something or understanding something completely. But the other thing I would say to that is that being caught up in the victimhood narrative is bypassing. My direct felt experience of that, again, it was this: I was avoiding something. I was refusing to actually digest something that was coming up. I couldn't do it, which is understandable, or I didn't want to.
Sure.
And so by popping out into this story about being a victim and this person doing all this harm, I was actually not showing up. I was not able to be with the immensity of what I was really tracking and feeling. So to me, this is the anti-bypass, but people tend to be much more upset about it because there's more ambiguous like language and
sure,
and of course a lot of other cultural programming around spirit and nature and
totally
and all that.
Well, I'm pretty much satisfied with my own questions. Is there anything that you feel you'd still like to say or do to sort of finish up this conversation today?
Well, it feels uncertain, so that doesn't really feel like a yes.
Sure. So maybe there's a to be continued.
Maybe there's another one later. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for doing this chit chat, underworld party, interviewing future dead people. Guest Larissa Call. We'll have all the links and all the stuff in the video description and all that. How do you want to end it?
Let's do a wiggle.
A wiggle?
So
Death wiggle?
Death wiggle.
Death wiggle. Fade to black. You have to edit that in though.